Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's workshop on the communication tools. There's a lot to cover, and I'll try to make it also quite fast-paced, especially for those of you who need communication tools. Normally, there's not enough time to communicate, right? We either have a lot on our plate, and we've experienced the challenges of miscommunication. Communication always happens in the mind of a perceiver. So not what we think we communicate, but what the other person receives from communication with us. And of course, there's a lot of challenges in the way because communication happens on so many different levels. For example, now you can hear my voice, hopefully, and you can see me. So there's a verbal communication, but also there's a lot of nonverbal communication in the way how I communicate with my hands, with my body posture, with my facial expressions, with the way how I look, with the way how I move my muscles, with the way how I move my micro muscles that you consciously don't see, but unconsciously you perceive. There's a whole study by Paul Ekman, Dr. Ekman. He's one of the four sort of front innovators in the research on emotions. And he has worked on how to recognize micro expressions and how that micro expressions affect the way how we feel on the perceiver and when we see somebody expressing their emotions unconsciously. So I might smile, but if my, for example, end of my lips go down, or if I have a micro sad expression, you might feel different emotions. Just because we have mirror neurons, that part of the system in our body, especially in our guts, we reflect in order for us to understand, to feel empathy, we need to reflect kind of like a mirror, what the other person is feeling, and then we can understand and also empathize. My name is Darya Haitoglou. I'm a psychologist and a director of Virginia Satir Institute in the UK in London. And we offer workshops and retreats and events on how to communicate better. And it's part of my Enrich method system. And I will share many actually exercises and practical tools with you from my latest book called Enrich, a practical guide to systemic enrichment for love, abundance, fulfillment, and happiness. There's a whole chapter on communication, and the Enrich system consists of different concepts that are connected to our hormones. E in the word Enrich stands for explore, that's connected to the hormone dopamine, N, nourish, connected to the hormone serotonin, R, respond, connected to the hormone cortisol, and C, I is endorphins, imagine, it's all about imagination, the power of imagination. And then C is communication. Communicate is all about estrogen, it's the power of connection, the power of harmonizing, the power of sort of that empathy, the power of being able to communicate the way how we want it to be perceived. And then the final letter H is for hugs and humor. But today it's all about C, communicate. Now, communication, as I said, can be verbal, so what words we use, and this is connected to our left hemisphere in our brain that is producing and connecting to facts and figures, words and language. Generally, it's all in sort of that part, sitting. But on the right part, we have a lot of communication tools that's happening automatically. So if you come from a different culture, you might be using a lot of more gestures or not. If you come in from a certain family background, a communication style may be different. But what is the most important is to understand how we like to communicate and what we need for communication, right? So communication tools, okay, if you just Google communication tools, of course, you will see a lot of technological communication tools. We have, of course, emails and chats and Skype and WhatsApp and Viber and communication tools, right? But we are talking about all communication tools that we have for our relationships, for our work, for our personal communication ability to communicate clearly, and some of the practical advice and exercise that we can do to communicate better. There are certain cultures that are, and sort of families, sort of individuals that are better communicators than others. Generally, there's a recipe for good communication, but it also is important to remember communication is never alone. Communication is always in the context of the culture and the situation we're in. So knowing the context, knowing who we're communicating with is the most important tool. Self-awareness and awareness of the other person, of their background, of their predisposition or their preferences. What kind of communication style do they prefer? Are they more extroverted? Do they like communicate openly and open-heartedly? Are they very easy to perceive and communicate words, or are they more kinesthetic, meaning that their style of perceiving information, communication, is more tactile, is more sensitive, is more body oriented? In order for them to communicate, they actually need to fidget with something. They need somebody to come and touch them, to sort of erase their awareness. For example, and I am one of those, I'm very kinesthetic as a person. So in order for me to understand certain things, I need to experience them in my body. So I prefer communication through experiencing. Some people are more visual. This kind of communication style or predisposition is very good when we see the person, when we communicate with them, when we send them pictures, when we send them videos, when we send them the visual kind of maps of communication, right? So when we draw certain things, when we do cartoon doodling, so, and knowing who we're talking to, is it a visual kind of communicator or a tactile, it's the type of communicator, or maybe they're auditory, maybe the way how they like to communicate and perceive information is through just listening. They love podcasts, they love listening to music, they love hearing words of appreciation. Normally the love language is also connected to words. Maybe they are not actually visual, auditory, or tactile. Maybe they prefer communication through smell and taste. Okay, it's a small percentage of people, but there are some like that. So noticing what kind of language they use when they discuss and describe what they like. If they say, well, I sense this is this, or I hear it was like that, or I am, let's touch base, or yeah, I remember that smell, it connected to my memory of the event or the place I went to. So noticing these nuances in the language patterns, they're very, very important to understand what kind of communicator we have in front of us, right? Who are our family members? And they can be the same family, but there can be very different communication styles. Out of our children, we have one visual and auditory, one very kinesthetic child, and one perceives as kind of like a bit of everything. She's like adapting to different, but I can already notice that the way how she expresses her love, and when she wants to communicate, she comes and hugs, for example, right, to get that attention, to show them that she's there. And then she moves her body, she just kind of, she's little, but she's already expressing herself through this kind of communication style, which is very interesting and very different way how, for example, my husband communicates or how I communicate. My husband is very auditory and visual, so he uses words and logic, whereas I sometimes like to have that kinesthetic touch, to hug, to stroke, to connect, to squeeze. And I notice, for example, when the person squeezes me and how they squeeze, even in my hand, when they do a handshake, or how they look. My mom used to just look at me. That was her communication style. I understood if I was in trouble or not by just her look. That's how powerful it can be. So knowing these nuances, it's also an important layer of this communication. We rarely discuss this, and we're not taught. We're sort of like, okay, this is your, communicate, write, email, but or speak. But sometimes that's not enough. Some people may not understand what we say. For example, father, it doesn't matter how many words I can express, unless I stay with him and go very slow. That's another characteristic. We communicate with tonality, with pitch of voice, with our timbre, with our sort of our speed, our high voice or our low voice, our how we express it with our breathing, even with position of our shoulders. Everything matters, everything communicates. Whether we want it or not, we always communicate. We cannot not. We cannot help. And communication is involuntary, meaning that we cannot stop communicating. So whether we want it or not, we do. So let's just get better at it. So some of the practical things. So one of the tools that I use, I call it chat. If I want to communicate with my partner, for example, chat, I'll say, let's go for a chat. What does it mean? Chat. C stands for connecting positively. The first, always the first step in communication. If we want to discuss something that is tough, something that is hard to discuss, we connect positively. We share something that we appreciate about each other. We share something that we appreciate about the world or whatever. We start on a positive note to create that level of openness without criticism. H in the word chat stands for holding negative. So I say, look, I'm going through something. Can you hold my negative? And if he says, okay, yeah, I have my moment. I have some time. I have my energy up. I can hold your negative. Then it's great. Sometimes he said, no, hold on. I'm too stressed. I'm overwhelmed. I cannot have this discussion right now. I said, okay, when is the right time for you to have that conversation? And if he hears me, because also men, especially boys, they scientifically have 11% less ability to hear. So when we speak in a very quiet voice, they might perceive it as a white noise. So we need to raise our voice, not to shout, of course, because they sometimes perceive it as a threat if it's really high and sudden. So boys, because of the development of testosterone, much more pronounced rather than in girls. In girls, there's a lot of testosterone produced also in puberty, but not as much as in boys. Girls hear much better than boys, and generally men. Women and men, because we have the predisposition from the hormonal, unless there's a hormonal therapy done, or some women are very testosterone led and some men are very estrogen led. That is also, but it's generally an exception. So we're talking about a common, let's say, predisposition. So there was a study confirming that boys need that clarification. Do you hear me? Do you hear me on the other side, what I'm saying to you? And my bet is that they don't. Literally, they're not pretending, they don't hear. So we need to first connect with them. Sometimes we need to touch, sometimes we need to say, hey, I'm speaking to you without any criticism. Like, can you hear me? One-on-one. Okay, great. Look, what I said is this, or could you repeat, please? Sometimes it's that simple. Could you please repeat? Is that now the right time to discuss this? Great. If not, well, let's find the time. Let's book the time. Okay. C, connecting positively. H, holding negative. A is appreciate efforts. Always appreciate an effort for somebody to have a conversation with us, because we take it for granted. We think that, but it is a huge energy resource. So we give in or we take in, depending on what kind of energy we bring into this conversation. If we communicate in negative stuff, the other person is sort of holding that, negativity. It's a burden. So we need to appreciate it whenever they say, okay, I can hold that conversation. So thank you very much for holding that whatever crap sheet that I've just shared with you, the negative part. And then always seal with T, which is touch and trust building something, like sharing a hope and wish, or just having that 7-second hug that creates a bond in the flow of a hormone called oxytocin, hormone of trust. When we hug, it produces automatically. So Virginia Satir, the mother of family therapy, said, we need 4 hugs a day to survive, 8 hugs a day to live a good life, and 12 hugs a day to thrive. So how many hugs a day do we have? That's a very, very good tool, and it's free. We just can have hug therapy from, our family members, from with our pets, with our, I don't know, with trees, even ourselves. We can hug ourselves and squeeze our arms and feel how it feels to hug ourselves, even if nobody's available. So this is a little tool called chat. I invite you, and I also encourage you to write these things down, because I'm going to go through a few of these practical exercises, and I would love for you to just remember at least one and implement at least one of these that resonates with you the most. So here we go. From my book, part 5, called Communicate, page 211, if you have a book. If you don't have a book, I'm going to share, but it's available on Amazon too. So, practical ways to improve communication. So, the first exercise is honest communication. I love honest communication. For me, it's very, very important. It's one of the principles that our family is based on. We have it written as part of our values. Honest communication. I mean, of course, I'm not gonna read the full thing, but I'm gonna just share this as an exercise. So sometimes we hold family meetings and we discuss what's happening. It could be something like puzzling or bothering or worrying a parent or maybe a child. If it's a work environment, the same thing. So how do we encourage honest communication? We first create an environment. Again, chat, creating and connecting on a positive, appreciating something, validating something positively, thanking people and feeling gratitude for them to actually be there to communicate with you. And then opening up into non-critical, confidential, so not to speak about what's been shared with nobody outside of this room, nowhere, never. Okay, nobody, nowhere, never. It's a very nice principle, and hold on to that, because when we establish that kind of a container of confidentiality, it's a foundational basic principle of trust. And if we start with ourselves opening up and sharing something very vulnerable and something that is deep and honest and true, we lead by example. Okay, and sometimes it can be like a form of a game, like an icebreaker. I'm sharing something vulnerable about myself. You didn't know that, I don't know, my grandmother suffered from schizophrenia, for example, or I I nearly went to a jail once, like I was caught in a shop, taking something. But I mean, whatever that is, that you're sharing something true, okay, with in the right environment, of course, but opening with something that is vulnerable and honest creates a pace for other people to also be honest and vulnerable, with the permission, with the right container. Okay. Another exercise is coming from Virginia Satir toolbox called the temperature reading. Many of you know this. So it's a wonderful tool that you can write. For example, me and my husband, we write this. We used to do it on a daily basis, write each other an email. If we want to share something, we always start with temperature reading. And every date we have, which we have on every Friday, we start with temperature reading. Now, how it goes. First, we always share appreciations, what we appreciate. And it can be many things, not just a few. The more appreciations, the better. The person who has more energy starts first. Sometimes even the person who is struggling the most starts first, but it's either or, doesn't matter. So I go, okay, appreciate it. We have sunshine. I appreciate we have hot water. I appreciate that we have food. I mean, simple things that we appreciate. I appreciate that we are actually having this time together, that you are with me, that I'm with you. I appreciate everything I can think of that I appreciate. All goes to the appreciation bucket, because what we're doing, we're building that container, that investment into positive investment bucket. We will then need it when we're going through the shit. When shit hits the fan, when we're going through struggles, when we're going through the difficulties in life, guess where we tap and get the energy from the positive bucket. So being strategic, being proactive, and preventing crisis, preventing some of the tantrums. And we do have tantrums even when we're adults. That's normal. We go through our emotional turbulent times, but we need that investment done into the positive container to have the regulated relationship and have somebody who is there with us, who can help soothe and regulate our brain on fire. You know, if you can see me, this is our brain. So this is prefrontal cortex, imagine, like this part. Okay, so inside there's a limbic system and brain stem. Okay, so our prefrontal cortex, it's an executive function, it's a soothing mechanism, it's the one that actually explains what's happening and says, okay, hold on, there are no lions in here, nobody's gonna eat you, everything is fine, relax. But amygdala and the limbic system that perceives the some event or a person's communication or a word or whatever behavior as a threat is like, it can be on fire. It can be amygdala hijack, we call it. It's like, whoa, it's a threat. They're gonna just attack you. You need to protect yourself, whatever that is. Or, oh, disconnect, danger zone, okay? So what happens with our prefrontal cortex? It sort of flips open. And that's when we have that unregulated communication, what goes ballistic, when it goes either super hot, like feisty, fiery, you know, fire temperature, or super cold, disconnection, freeze zone, icy cold, no communication, stonewalling, which is pretty much two sides of the same coin. It's not a good strategy for long-term communication and intimacy creation, trust building, and a great decision making. This is not the recipe. When our prefrontal cortex is flipped open, we do not make good decisions. We do not communicate very well. Our communication style goes from very functional to dysfunctional. And of course, here comes all the problem, you know, in relationship, in mismatching, and in lacking empathy, lacking compassion, etc. So how do we soothe that prefrontal cortex? How do we make sure that our whole system is taking a very, very nice road and goes and becomes strategic and communicates very beautifully, very soothing, very nice, very delicate, very loving? How do we do that? So there's a whole art of soothing the amygdala and working on the prefrontal cortex. So these exercises, what I'm giving you, these are like a gym, like a brain gym for prefrontal cortex. Okay, the more you try, the more you do them, the more you practice them, the better you will be at learning how to control the emotions and communicate better and have a more balanced approach to communication. So we talked about appreciations, right, and temperature reading. Then, and I really stress this first step, because most people, when something bothers them, they go straight into criticism or blaming or talking about their concerns, which is a flood gate, this sort of like opening. It's a very, very delicate stage that can turn a person into anxiety or depression or all sorts of mental health. There's a lot of stress. So we want to prevent it by soothing and giving them appreciation. Then we can open the box and share something that is called new information, something that happened to us during the day or during the week or during the month, whatever, during a year, they're not aware of, something new, but without any criticism. Then we talk about puzzles, something maybe that bothers us, but it's more puzzling rather than criticism. So, oh, I didn't realize, you know, what was happening when you said that, or how did that happen? I didn't realize, you know, when do we have our meeting about A, B, C? Okay, puzzles. And only number 4, we share worries with recommendations. And recommendation is a very important one. When we share a concern or worry, we recommend something, okay? And then final 5th step is hopes and wishes. So appreciation, new information, puzzles, words with recommendations, and hopes and wishes. And that's all. It's called temperature reading, because what we do, not only we measure, we read the temperature, hot or cold, but we also can shift it and we can balance it. So whenever we do that, we can only spend like appreciating each other, and then we share some new information and puzzles. By the time we talk about worries and recommendation, we are already in a good space. And I used to be in a recruitment in big multinational, and we would do that in our team, and the dynamic of the team changed straight away, because there's this structure, there's that care, that there's this validation, appreciation, and I don't feel like threatened by somebody, but I feel, oh, they appreciate, they lead by example. How about I appreciate too? And I feel good, I feel my positive bucket. And then my communication style becomes more productive, more sort of embracing and more aware. I become a better communicator. Okay, that was in brief the temperature reading. The next exercise called perceptual positions, very important one. When we communicate, we often communicate from the inside out. So meaning I take my first position. Okay, I feel this, I think that, I think that happened, and I see this behavior, blah blah blah. Okay, or if I'm in a placating position, meaning I'm always like, oh, it's my fault, it's, oh, you want this, you want that. I always see the second position, meaning you. Perceptual positions, there's also a third, meta position. And the exercise is to take turns. For example, when there's a dialogue with somebody, like your partner or your child or your colleague or your client, it's very healthy to ask them to tell you, to reflect back what they heard you said, okay? And you'll be surprised how different they interpret what you think you said. So it's a fun exercise. So if, for example, if they say, oh, I have this problem with this person and I don't know how to communicate, they're not listening to me or they're not hearing me, I will say, okay, let's imagine you're taking their position. Sometimes it's very difficult for clients to take that. And it takes a little bit of time for them all to sort of look at it. We sometimes even change our body position. We take two places. So I say, okay, stand here as yourself and now move to a different position, like gestalt, you know, like an empty chair. Move to an empty chair and talk to me. I will be your role, for example, playing your role. Talk to me as if you were that person. Okay, second position, turn it into the first. And then I asked them, okay, imagine if there was a bypass, a person, maybe from a different planet, you know, a person who doesn't know both of either of you, and they just observe this conversation. What would they say is happening? What kind of conversation, communication is happening? What would they say? What do they observe? It's fascinating what happens when they say that. Oh, well, they would say, you know, we kind of like arguing or fighting. Okay, you know, what could they advise you as a person who is from, you know, a different, let's say, city or country or planet? You know, what would they say you could do to make it this communication differently? And again, you can take a third position, a move outside of this two, to embrace that third position, the meta position. And having that perceptual sort of movement can help with empathy, can help with releasing stress, can help with just finding a different communication style. Often people say, well, you know what, I cannot just communicate. I say what I want, but you know, they don't hear me. And I say, okay, do you know what their love language is? They say, what is that? You know, Gary Chapman wrote a book called The 5 Love Languages. There are different ways how we appreciate each other and how we hear. So some people love and express love, or love to be loved when another person says words of appreciation. Another love language is gifts. Third love language is act of service, doing something. A fourth love language is touch. And the final is a quality of time. So knowing your love language and the love language of your partner or your child or your colleague, doesn't matter, is very important in how we communicate, what kind of words we use, what kind of gestures we do or not. We come to somebody's place, do we bring a gift if their love language is gifting? Or do we ask them if they need some help if their love language is active service? Or do we say, look, I'm here present with you, I'm looking into your eyes, I'm not looking at my phone, I'm not doing anything in parallel, I am here for you, if the love language is quality of time. Or if the love language is words of appreciations, I'll tell you I love you, I'll tell you I respect you, I'll tell you, please forgive me, whatever the words, I'm going to pay attention to the words that I use, and I give much more of those. You see how different the communication becomes, and we can shift depending on that awareness and having that preventative dialogues, I call them, how we can establish this sort of bonding, that intimacy, that connection beforehand. So having meeting time, even if it's just short, the quantity is not as important as quality of communication time. Even with children, sometimes, and a lot of mothers or fathers, they feel guilty that they don't spend enough time with their children. But if you just spend quality of time, it can be like half an hour a week or whatever, with each child or with each family member, with each of your group or a member of your team at work, just quality of time, but the time that they want, the way how they want. Okay, what is their language? If they really appreciate active service and you just talk blah blah blah, that's not quality of time with them. If they want you to be there present, but you are just doing things, that's not what they want. Okay, so knowing their needs, knowing their love languages, and appreciating and having a discussion, what kind of things or kind of predisposition are they? Visual, are they kinesthetic? Having these dialogues, understanding people, and having the right communication style, bespoke communication style for that person. That's the best counseling, teaching technique, communication technique, parenting technique. I mean, you name it. This is the best, right? The more aware we are about the other and about ourselves too, because we would need to also share how we like to be communicated, how we perceive the world, what kind of information. There's certain tests you can take online for free called, for example, Myers-Briggs. There were two ladies, a mother and a daughter. They took a Jungian sort of theory, and they developed a test that you can find online, which shows what kind of predispositions you have, extroverted versus introverted. Do you receive energy by talking to people, or do you receive energy by spending time with a book on your own? Okay, it's a predisposition of how we sort of resource ourselves. Another continuum is how we appreciate, how we perceive the world. Are you a big picture person or a details oriented person? Very different communication styles. If I am like an eagle, in the Lakota tribe, animal sort of descriptions, and I like to see the patterns and the strategy, the big picture, the trends. Tell me about the vision, your mission, your purpose, your life, manifestations. I just want big kind of thing, versus tell me exactly what's going to happen in terms of this project that we're doing. What are the facts? What are the figures? What are the details? Tell me the details. I mean, the magic and the devil is in the detail. And I want to know what kind of materials, what kind of objectives, what kind of goals we have, how much budget do we have, what kind of pros and cons and principles. You see, very different kind of communication with that dichotomy. Also, as part of Myers-Briggs, you will discover if you're for example, organizer, the way how you like to organize your life proactively, or leaving things up until the last moment and procrastinate. And both have positive intention and great strategies, because people who organize proactively, they like things to be planned and they don't like surprises last minute. So communication should happen like for them very much ahead of time. If you want to go on a date or travel or do a project, it's important to know that this person really likes to have some time in advance to know about it. Another person who prefers to leave it up until last moment, they actually use the time to think through, to mull through, to just sort of collect all the data up until the last moment when they make a decision. And they don't like when you're giving them a deadline long time ahead and you pressurize them, to give you something like long in advance. They're like, why bother? Things might change. Things might be different. Communication there is like, this is a deadline. You need to do it yesterday. Then they get motivated. Oh, wow, okay, I really feel pressure. I can actually perform better. Very different. Okay. And also there's another continuum, how we like to work with people, or do we have a thinking style preference or feeling style? For example, if certain professions, they're very, very good at communicating, let's say, equally to people. They think about strategy first. What is good for everybody, for the whole organization? They think, okay? Even there are some exceptions for people. No, these are great policy makers. These are great lawyers, but like, defining law. These are great people who create systems, who create processes. They're very much sort of thinking about how to make the right things, versus other people who prefer to feel how this person feels. These are great HR people, managers, when they think, oh, my Nancy, my reportee, she really just felt so bad. Her husband left, or her child is sick, and I just want to make an exception for her. This is kind of a feeling person, and communication style is very different. So all these nuances, a simple test can give you a lot of insights about your and other communication preferences. Okay, we went a little bit off to Myers-Briggs and tests, but I hope you're catching some of the nuggets here for yourself and your professional and personal life. Another exercise is, I call it nonverbal communication exercise. Try the mirror, okay, and communicate with yourself as you do it, for example, with others. Maybe record yourself when you do sessions. I love recording myself, and then I watch and I look at my facial expressions, my body expressions, the things that I'm not saying, but I'm showing with my eyes. That micro expression of criticism, that micro expression of doubt, or disgust about something that I don't like, and I'm nonverbal is much more powerful than verbal. We actually hear, when we hear words, we filter them, but what we notice is how the person is talking to us. So we remember the feeling, we remember the overall impression of the person rather than the actual words they said. And the feeling and impression we get from nonverbal communication, their posture, their tonality, their speed of voice, their breathing. Are they shallow breathing or the deep breathing? Are their voice high pitch or low pitch? Low pitch we prefer for trust, and people who have lower voices, they are more authoritative kind of voices. There was a lot of study done on telecommunication when people actually trusted doctors with lower voice versus high pitch voice. It's fascinating. It's evolutionary, I guess, something about that soothing voice that we like, and we trust that whatever elder or person with gravitas, with charisma, the singers, I have no idea, the celebrities, but there's some evolutionary reasons for that preference. And you can try different nonverbal communication styles and see how, for example, under stress you communicate. I notice when I'm under stress, I go higher pitch, faster, and I move very, very chaotic. When I'm in my core, I move slower, my voice goes deeper, I have peripheral vision, I see everything around me, I have a light smile on my face, I enjoy what I'm doing, and I have a very deep and relaxed breathing. Certain things like that we perceive unconsciously about the other. Even the smell, right, makes a difference. Nonverbal. Another exercise, the power of positivity, it's called. I sometimes invite people to have a yes day. They choose one day when they say only yes to to one person of the family. It's a very tough one because they go. Of course, you can set the boundaries, but try it. Just say, even inside you, say like yes, yes. Communicate positively. If your negative bucket is overflowing, you need to really replenish it with positivity. Some research says we need 5-to-1 ratio, like Barbara Fredrickson and Sonia Lubomirsky, about the power of positivity and how to feel happy. We need 5 positive interactions for each negative. For example, you have a negative thought, straight away you can think 5 positive. Okay, I'm alive, I don't have pain, or I don't know, I live in a nice place, I have my partner or have my children, whatever, doesn't matter. In the brain, it's pretty much the same. It's just a different kind of quality of energy, positive or negative. If you imagine something, if you think about the past, if you experience it in the present, as soon as you activate that neural connection, you actually sort of open in that synaptic synapse to open for positive energy, and the neural system works differently. Either parasympathetic turns on, sort of relaxed state, rest and digest, or sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight. So we want parasympathetic, we want relaxed state, we want something that is soothing and very positive. Okay, yeah, that was the exercise. Give up criticism and judgment. Just give up and try it. What happens? The world will be a better place for sure. First pace, then lead. There's an exercise on page 230. It's all about pacing the other person. When we start a conversation with somebody, even if I'm in a positive mood and I notice they're in a different place, first I kind of connect with them. Maybe I sit in the same way, I pace them, and then as soon as I mirror or kind of connect with them in their space, then I change slowly my position, then I change my tonality, then I change my the words that I use, and then I lead. That's an exercise for communication, very important. A lot of leaders do that, political leaders. Another exercise called open-ended questions only. So what we know from the research, when we communicate and when we ask closed questions, for example, did you do that? Would you agree? Or do you like this? Or just questions that lead to yes or no answers. These are not great questions. The best questions are open-ended questions that start with what, why, what, where, and how. Okay, so all these open-ended questions, these are great. Socrates used to do that. So it's a Socratic method that we use in coaching, we use in counseling, in therapy, in many therapies. Open-ended. Okay, so tell me more. What happened? Why did you think so? Or where could you do this? Or what really happened? And how would you like this? So, open-ended questions. Then there are a couple of exercises on starting conversations. We can start conversations very differently. Actually, if you notice, we usually start conversations in the same way, with similar questions to different people. but learning how to create that variety of communication, it also flexes and stretches our muscle of being a great communicator. Okay, so starting very differently. Just become aware of how you just that initial, hello, how are you? Or how was your day? Or hey, how are you feeling? uh, Notice that there's some sort of routine in the way how we communicate with certain people. So I invite you to change that and explore that and break the mold of that routine style of communication and start differently. You will notice different results. Okay, there's a little piece on money, because a lot of communication, especially in couples and families and in organizations and businesses, go around financial communication about money. And that's generally one of the toughest and also the most painful ones, because people don't like to talk about money. And if they do, they just fight. So I invite people to talk about money, money strategy, money making, money saving, money spending, money principles. Uh, that's a great way to have, for example, we have a logistics meeting with my partner, with my husband. We have 5 different businesses, and we start, okay, we have dedicated logistic time, and we also have our financial document, which we update monthly, our money document, where we have different scenarios of what happens if, but also we have incomes, we have outcomes, so the money in, money out, and we see where we are. We do that strategically. We both have economic backgrounds. Our first degrees were in economics. So we know how it is important to have this preventative medicine. We'll call it preventatively discuss and agree on principles, how we spend, what kind of priorities we have in our family life as a couple, as a family, what we prioritize, where we spend and how much and how. I deal with so many couples issues related to money, and not just money, but communication about money. Generally, there's there's this boiling period where, okay, we hold our grudges, we hold our negativity, we sort of like, oh, I don't like it, and then the lid opens, and that poor brain, the prefrontal cortex goes, flip open, and then we off the rail into the void. But if we just do it proactively before the actual crisis or situation where before it's too late, there's so many things we can do about it. There's so many things we can do strategically together, thinking about, okay, plan A, plan B, plan C. Okay. And it creates a sense of trust, a sense of security, sense of stability, and also it normalizes this kind of conversations. And we do that once a month, as I said, and it helps us. We actually, sometimes we used to fight in the past because I had a different preference at spending or earning, and I didn't feel I liked the way how my husband wanted sharing resources or putting certain things in different buckets. But I've learned my way and his way of communication. And then, as we did temperature reading during our date night, we have Tuesday night for communication about logistics. Then it went smoother because we connected on the intimacy. We had our romantic part there. So we just were fully involved in making sure our businesses were healthy. Okay. And also is a great communication opportunity to talk about, logistics, business, family structure, family communication, family issues. This is like having a company, having a family or any partnership. So here it is. I just shared a lot of practical tools, a lot of hopefully interesting insights or some ideas that you've noted down and you've taken on board. Remember, I would like at least one tool for you to pick up out of all of these. And remember, we discussed the honest communication, the chat first, connect positively, hold negative, appreciate efforts, touch. Then we talked about exercises, honest communication, temperature reading, perceptual positions, nonverbal communication, power of positivity, giving up criticism and judgment, first pace, then lead, open-ended questions, and starting conversations differently. And then we talked about communication about money. And of course, nonverbal and our posture and verbal, learning how to read the person from their love languages, understanding their preferences. Myers-Briggs, for example, it's called MBTI, Myers-Briggs. It's sort of the same, but if you Google it, you might want to find MBTI, Myers-Briggs. I think it's traits indicator, or I don't remember, but you can Google it. And understanding the preferences in terms of perception of reality. So do they like to hear? Do they like to see? Are they visual? Are they kinesthetic? Are they auditory? Are they olfactory? Are they smell? Do they appreciate smells and tastes? And that's how they perceive the reality. All these little nuances, they matter in the way how we communicate. So take it slow, step by step, choose one thing out of the whole set here, and watch this recording again and sometime in the future and pick up another one and practice. Practice makes it perfect. Good luck. Have a great day. Let me know how it goes. I really, really like to hear from you. Find me on social media. Write me an email, Darya@enrich.global. See you soon. Bye-bye.